Hey guys, and welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined today by Andre Seegers and Ash Paulson to discuss Andre's recent hands-on time with Splatoon. So Andre, what'd you think?
Yeah, so I got to play the game for like 5 or 6 hours, I think. I mean, it got to the point where I had played so much, I actually had to go sit down, because I had like no sleep from the night before because of Nintendo's mobile thing. I had to take a break. But the game's good. It's really fun. We saw, single player for the first time, or played it for the first time, I should say. We saw a new mode being Splat Zones, and we played a ton of that, as well as Turf War, which we also played a lot of that at E3 and other conferences like GDC. But we got to try on a few new maps this time as well. So yeah, I actually, I finally got a better feel for the game. What we saw at E3 was very enticing, but it was just a glimmer of what the whole product would be. And while there's still a lot of questions left unanswered, like how much more there's going to be to the game, I definitely have a better grasp on on what this game exactly is, and what that is something that's pretty awesome.
It sounds really awesome. Like, I watched all your footage, and it's just like another reason I kind of wish I'd been able to go to that, because it looks so much fun. It just it sounds like they just had a ton of people out there to try out the game and show it all off. And I mean, 5 hours with a game is kind of in depth. I mean, that to me that shows like a lot of confidence in it, that they just sort of let you go loose and like go crazy. Here's what it is, and enjoy.
Well, the whole event is a little bit unusual because as long as I've been doing GameXplain, they've never done this where they've flown us up to Seattle to their headquarters and they just threw us into a room for like basically an entire day to play this game. On top of giving us a tour of the campus. We got to see the relatively new Nintendo building, which just opened in 2010, I think, which was interesting for me to go back to because I used to work at Nintendo in the call center. And back then it was like an old 1980s style like office building, completely nondescript. So the new building is quite a big enhancement over what they had before. So it was fun for me to see the change, how it's changed since I've been there in like the 10 years since I last worked there.
Well, it's interesting that they're going all out like this for Splatoon, because it really, kind of like you said, Derek, it shows they have a lot of confidence in it, and they really want to get the word out about it. And it seems like more than a lot of their other recent games, which I find interesting. I wonder if maybe they're trying to push it this much because it's a somewhat rare example of a new IP from Nintendo that they're really trying to get behind and establish as one of their new franchises going forward.
That definitely has to be the case. They've had a couple new IPs now too, on with codename Steam, and that's on top of whatever else they may be working on, such as like the project games we saw at E3 last year. So I do wonder if this. I mean, it does seem to be a conscious effort on their part to broaden their IP base, and hopefully their user base as well. Because the thing is, you can keep making Mario games and they'll keep making money, but that's pretty consistently going to only reach the same demographic over and over and over. And if you want to reach people beyond that, you're going to have to start making new games. And Splatoon is definitely an example of that. I mean, who would expect a Nintendo to make a shooter, but one still very much in the style of a Nintendo game, right? Like, there's no mistaking this for any other type of game. Even calling it a shooter, like, almost feels a little bit weird because it plays very differently. Like, the core mechanic is shooting, of course.
Yeah.
But there's so much more to it, and, and it's how it mixes that shooting with everything else that makes it feel so unique.
Well, I found it interesting that I saw one quote from Reggie was that he wants the Splatoon to become basically the Mario Kart of shooters, where they have just a new one out, people are get excited for it, and it's just sort of this like fun alternative to racing games where it's just a little bit more cartoony, a little bit more crazy, interesting different items, and they just keep up that fun level of being bright and colorful, which, if that's what they're going for, I'd say they're succeeding.
Yeah, he actually said that while I was there. He came out and gave a brief speech about the game, as well as touching on the mobile stuff, because that had just happened a few hours earlier. He did not look like he wanted to deal with a bunch of journalists at that point, by the way.
Yeah, I bet.
But yeah, I guess that is kind of a good way of putting it, I suppose, even though I hate using PR speak verbatim. But it does kind of seem to be like the Mario Kart of shooters. It does seem to be more accessible. And Nintendo's really demonstrating that with how they're going about the online mode, where you have normal battles and ranked battles. And normal battles are such as the Turf War, which we've seen a bunch of already, is made to be accessible to everyone. Like, it doesn't matter how skill-based you really are, you can go in and have fun. Whereas the secondary mode, or one of the other modes, I should say, being Splat Zones, actually requires a fair amount more strategy and skill, and that's why they're locking it behind. Actually, it won't. I mean, not even locking it. Like, it won't even be available in the game on day one until a certain threshold of players around the world reaches level 10. Once that happens, Nintendo will unlock that mode for everyone playing the game. Although you still need to be personally at level 10 in order to access it yourself. So that is definitely an interesting way of going about it, and shows how they're trying to, manage making a shooter type of game while still appealing to basically everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Nintendo's really the only company who would do something so convoluted in terms of locking a mode away until a certain threshold of people reaches level 10. That's so strange to me. I mean, yeah, I guess it's good because I don't know. I guess that way you're sure that your players are familiar enough with the game to get the most out of the mode by the time you unlock it. But I don't know. I just feel like this is the kind of thing that only Nintendo would do, which I guess it's fine for better or worse. I don't know. The multiplayer looks fun, but I have to say, I mean, I watched your footage, Andre, from the event, and the single player is really looks to me to be where it's at. Like, it looks so fun. The game has such a striking visual identity. There's literally nothing out there that looks like it. And I don't know, the single player campaign seems to have a real sense of whimsy to it, and it's almost like almost looks like you're playing a cartoon, really. And I don't know, I found myself.
It's almost like it has "tune" in the name.
That's That's well, it's a good point. But no, honestly, I really found myself super excited for the single player campaign based on the footage that you took at the event.
Oh, let me tell you, the single-player campaign is pretty great from what I played. Now, keep in mind, it was all early missions. They were mostly tutorial-based. But I had a lot of fun with them. And it really shows, like, it's a lot more platformy-based than I expected. Like, there's a lot of platforming involved. It's not just shooting. A lot of it is, going about just traversing the landscape. Whether it's climbing up, tall walls by spraying it with ink, or riding these ink wells, like, just spray from the ground. There is a lot of creativity in these levels, and as you mentioned, like, it looks awesome. Like, this whole game looks great, but I just love the look of the single-player worlds, because the whole thing takes place underground. The whole single-player campaign is underground in the in Octo Valley, and but despite that, though, it still looks like it takes place above ground. There's these giant. Like, if you look in the background, you can see like these giant, like, screens, I guess, like panels that are made to look as if you're outside. But if you, like, look straight up, you can see, like, a giant, like, light bulb up there, or, like, a light source. Like, it's got very mechanical, but still a bit of a natural look to it. It's a really unique, just a really unique art style, and I totally dig it.
Well, that kind of seems to be to extend to the whole game, too. I mean, this whole game is kind of built around the idea of not really looking like anything else out there.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't, yeah. I mean, I mean, you're literally spraying colors around the environment. It's actually kind of funny, because I guess the levels by themselves do start off, at least the multiplayer, start off kind of like a little bit drabbish looking, at least comparatively, and then you're literally going around and infusing this world with color. And there's actually a fair amount of color already, I should clarify. But it's especially colorful after just like 30 seconds or so of gameplay. And I love, like, I just want to mention too, like, how much they nailed, like, the look of that ink and the feel of it. Like, when you're spraying it around, like, it feels like it has substance to it. They just did a great job with that. And I love how you can actually even see, like, the light reflecting off of it.
Yeah, I kind of got that sense just from watching your footage, just how kind of visceral the paint seemed, and just how much it really, how big of an impact it makes when you actually are filling the world with color yourself. Yeah, it's like kind of a constant visual feedback reward loop type thing.
It is. I mean, that really is it. I mean, and you play the E3, so you know what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Like it is like a really good marriage of like the visuals with the gameplay. Like, it really, I mean, it looks like, and sounds like, and feels like you're swimming through this inky substance, and it just feels great. Like, this whole game is like really above anything. I have to say. The controls might be what make it feel so great too. I mean, again, it's a whole package, but everything feels great about it.
What did you think of the music, or was the event loud enough to where you couldn't hear anything?
So it's kind of funny, because at the event I could barely hear anything. I mean, you can hear the sound effects and whatnot, but there's like 15 TVs going off at once, a bunch of people yelling and talking. I've got the rep right there next to me talking. So when I actually got home and watched a gameplay video, I could actually listen to it. I'm like, this game sounds really good. I posted a video of, I think the 3rd level. It has like this really... It starts off like a little bit slow, but then it ramps up in intensity. And unfortunately, I cut off the video because I can only show a minute of the campaign at a time. I cut it off, you know, just shortly after it starts getting to that point. Like, watching the whole video, like, I'm really digging that song there. And the music in general just has this really quirky vibe to it that, again, just meshes so well with everything they're going for in this game.
Well, the whole game just has this distinct look to it that they've nailed really since the first trailer. And it just seems like with each new bit that they show us, it just keeps, you know, showing how unique it is. Like, you see, when you rescue that little light bulb guy, I forget what they're called, but
Zapfish.
The Zapfish, yeah, they have it tucked under their arm and just sort of like, you know, he looks like he's made of like cloth or whatnot. It's a very interesting style, and you got Captain Cuttlefish down there always talking to you, and all the different Octarian types is like there seems to be a great enemy variety so far, and even in this term of challenges, because it seems like they're even able to infuse some of the multiplayer gameplay into the single player with through the Octarians.
Yeah, the Octarians, which are basically just Inklings. So, like, yeah, it basically, I said that in the preview, it does feel a bit like a single player version of the multiplayer. You have this more open level, and you have these Octarians that can just go around, you know, as an octopus, swim around and pop up and shoot you, and then go swim off again somewhere else.
So going back to the multiplayer real quick. Which mode did you prefer? Did you enjoy Turf War more, or did you enjoy Splat Zones more?
I couldn't tell you. I like both for different reasons. So, if you just want more of a laid back time, Turf War is where it's at. But if you want something a little bit more serious, then you'll want to play Splat Zones.
I can tell you were taking it serious. You were camping.
Hey, that was only after several matches, okay? But that actually is what's nice about Splat Zone, is there is a lot of strategy to it. Whereas there seems to be a little bit less so for Turf War. It's more kind of like, you know, whatever goes. Whereas in Splat Zones, you know, there is a lot more to it, because that mode is basically King of the Hill. But because it works off of ink, in that, you know, it doesn't matter if you actually stand in the territory, but what matters is if you took control of it by spraying ink all over, you can actually maintain control of it by staying outside of the territory, which is really interesting. So you can take up, you know, you can like hide out on a structure nearby, try to snipe people away from it. I don't know, it just feels a little bit different than your typical King of the Hill because of the mechanics in Splatoon.
I guess this would be a good time to bring up the other thing that you found out about the multiplayer, and that is that there will be no voice chat, which seemed to cause a bit of a stir amongst people, learning that officially.
Yeah. So yeah, that seems to be causing a little bit of a stir online. So at the event, you know, they mentioned that, and I wasn't terribly surprised by this because this is Nintendo. But they actually went a little bit more in depth into why they omitted voice chat, and they mentioned that as the developers were working on the game, they discovered that they wanted to have the emphasis be on communication through in-game actions and the gamepad, and that there being no voice chat was an entirely deliberate decision on their part. So they were stressing that they wanted the communication to come through in how you're playing the game, I guess. As well as the gamepad, which I don't fully understand because there's not much you can do with the gamepad.
Yeah.
You do have, I mean, with the gamepad you can like teleport to a player by tapping on them, which is cool. And then there are also some very limited communication in the form of the D-pad. If you press like up or down, you can send like a short message, something such as like "let's go" or something else along those lines. So yeah, that's Nintendo's rationale for it. I don't know if I completely buy it.
Me neither.
I don't know if it was the best decision, especially in a mode like Splat Zones, because that one is definitely more teamwork based. You do want to work together. With that said, though, I do want to mention that, you know, during the event, even though we were all standing side by side for the most part, you know, we're in the same room, obviously, we weren't really using any deliberate teamwork, like as in communicating with one another in person, and it still kind of worked out. Like we still kind of like managed to do some things. But, I think having voice chat would definitely be preferable for this. And I know you have some things to say about this, Ash.
Well, only that I pretty much agree. I mean, I just think it's, again, I'm not super surprised because it's Nintendo, and Nintendo always does this kind of stuff, which is unfortunate. I just, if they're trying to make, this is their first foray into the quote-unquote shooter genre, even if it's not like a traditional shooter. And if they're trying to, legitimize that, I don't understand why make the deliberate decision to not include voice chat, especially when you can. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't really care about having voice chat with strangers. That you can do that on Xbox Live, PlayStation Network. I'm not interested in talking to strangers because they usually end up being jerks. And so I totally get Nintendo's rationale for that in terms of protect the kids and all that. But why not voice chat with friends? This is the exact kind of game that I want to have voice chat with friends, at least. And, I don't know. Like you said, Andre, I don't really buy their excuse. And even if that was their deliberate decision, I just don't think it was the right one. Because, I don't know, even if it was made for deliberate reasons, it comes off as Nintendo just being Nintendo. Because this is what they always do with voice chat in their games. Even their most popular ones like Smash or Mario Kart. Now, Smash I understood because of, the latency issue, and they want to, they want to guarantee that the experience itself is as smooth as possible. But for a team-based shooter, you don't really need to worry about that quite as much. And, I can only go off your impressions, Andre, but it sounds like Splat Zones is strategic enough to where having, voice chat communication with your teammates would have been really helpful.
Yeah, it definitely could be. There definitely is strategy there. So it is odd that, the lack of voice chat does make some sense, or relatively speaking, some sense in games like Mario Kart or Smash Brothers.
Sure.
Those are, by and large, you're playing by yourself.
Right.
With other people. As opposed to Splatoon, which is entirely team-based from what we've seen, multiplayer-wise. And, I imagine it would be a lot of fun to hop online and play with your friends and being able to talk, communicate with them during that. So, yeah, it's odd that they're not even allowing the option, at least for friends. Because I do get the stranger thing, even though I think, I would like to have the option there as well. But at least with friends, that should definitely be in the game. And the fact that it's not is disappointing. I don't think the game needs it per se. The game will still be a lot of fun without it.
Sure.
But I do think it is missing something by not having it. I feel like there would be more depth there if you could communicate with your team and build strategies based on that, as opposed to everyone doing their own thing all the time.
Well, and it comes off as, again, it kind of comes off as one of those decisions where Nintendo willfully stays in the past, and just to do it because that's the way it's always been done. And I don't understand that, because even as they announce things like the NX and mobile development and show that they're willing to change and adapt and evolve, they make a decision like this where, we have a team-based shooter that we're specifically not going to add voice chat to, and it's 2015. Your excuses for not doing it are pretty much have run out, in my opinion. And again, this isn't, it's not, like you said, it's not required for the game to have it, but it just seems like one of those strange Nintendo decisions where they're just trying to stay in the past on purpose.
I can't help but wonder if part of it is that, this game looks great, right? Mario Kart 8 looked great. Smash Brothers look great. I do wonder if part of it is Nintendo just pushing the system to its limits all the time.
It could be.
There's literally no CPU power left to run anything else.
Yeah,
because Splatoon runs perfectly smooth, but
yeah, it looked like it was a smooth 60 frames per second, like Super Mario 3D World and Smash, and yeah. But no, that could be it. Yeah, and I guess if that was it, they're not going to come out and say that. But
right.
But I don't know. It's just it without us knowing that, it does feel like a willful decision on their part to kind of remain in the past in this sense.
The whole fact that they're already making excuses for it as far as why they're not doing it does make it a little suspect. But that's it's their choice, it's their games and whatnot. It's just unfortunate because I have no desire to play with strangers online. All I've seen that before. I've witnessed it, and I just never enjoy it.
Yeah.
But having it with friends would be nice, but I guess it's all just comes down to the whole setting up your Skype again and talking to them that way while you're playing, and there you go.
Which actually would give some teams a huge huge leg up if one of them is able to communicate with everyone and the other team isn't at all.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not sure. It's a bit odd. I'm also we mentioned this before about how Splat Zones is coming later. I'm curious how much later it's going to be.
That is one of my concerns. So Nintendo, they stress that they don't have a date in place at all. Like, they are literally basing it on like some threshold that they have internally, although it sounds like they haven't even themselves quite figured out like what number that's going to be, or at least the rep explaining this, didn't know what it would be. So yeah, who knows like what arbitrary number they've set internally that they have to hit before they make it available. And it's kind of funny. Like I kind of like the concept of it, but then conversely, I was in this room, I played the game for like an hour, and it's already playing Splat Zones. you know? It's like how much experience of the game do you really need to start playing this game? Or to start playing this mode?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, why go to the trouble? It almost feels a little condescending in terms of not feeling like your player's going to handle whatever, gameplay mode you've designed for them in this game. And I don't know, I mean, we'll deal with it, it's not that big a deal, but why go to the trouble? Why even bother? If you're building this mode and it's a tentpole mode for your game, why go to the trouble of locking it behind some arbitrary, time limit or level cap? Or I don't understand.
And so I think I do get it, right? This is Nintendo's first foray into shooters. I think they are largely targeting their same demographic, Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, whatever. A lot of younger gamers perhaps too. And I can see a lot of people possibly being frustrated by that mode if it's, say, one of their first times playing a shooter, or if they're younger, because you do tend to die a lot more in that game, because you are going to the central location, and if you're not completely familiar with what you're doing and the mechanics of the game, you'll just get taken out all the time. Like, it's a war zone at that central location. So I do kind of see it. So I get the rationale behind it. I don't know if it's the best decision, but I think I do get the idea behind it. Sure. So I don't know.
So another interesting thing happened while you were at this whole event, Andre. You got caught on film.
I did, apparently.
Apparently,
as I've heard from like everyone.
Yes, as you've been informed by many different people around, you were in a Playboy video. You naughty boy, you.
I had no idea those girls were actually from Playboy. I hung out with a bunch of the journalists there, or a bunch of the people invited to this event. I had no idea that's where they were from. So it was a surprise to me to see myself pop up in a Playboy video.
Wasn't really that much of a surprise.
Well, I knew this day was coming eventually, right?
This is what he was always going to do next, so he now already has his foot in the door.
Exactly.
So. Centerfold next, so...
Oh, man. That was a mental image I did not need.
Yeah, exactly, my eyes.
Man. So, that's kind of a strange marketing campaign, though, for this game. For this game in particular. I mean, it's not a marketing campaign, I guess, but it's strange that they're specifically having Playboy models play the game. Yeah,
I guess that goes to show, like, Nintendo is really trying to use this new IP to broaden their demographic, I think. They are trying to reach people outside of those who've already bought a Wii U. Because Playboy probably targets, I'm guessing, an older demographic compared to Nintendo's the overall demographic. So it makes a lot of sense, although it is kind of funny when you look at Splatoon, and as you mentioned before, Ash, like, it is a cartoon, basically.
Yeah.
Like, there is nothing mature about it in terms of content. Thematically, I should say.
Yeah, sure.
It is a Nintendo IP, which means it can still, if you play it, it's fun, right? Like, how many older people still like Mario Party just because it's just a fun game to sit back and hang out with your friends with.
Yeah. Or lose friends with.
That is true.
All right, Andre. Well, is there any final thoughts you have about Splatoon and your playtime with it, or anything else you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, just overall, that I had a really good time with this game. It has, we talked about some of the negatives, no voice chat, and potentially Nintendo locking away that mode for a little while, which might be a fine idea. Who knows at this point. Overall, I had a really good time with this game. It is a ton of fun. There seems to be a fair amount of depth there, at least compared to what we saw at E3. I'm still not entirely sure how long, how much longevity there may be to the experience. It may be great. It's just hard to tell at this point. But based on my playtime, I had a really good time with this game, and I do think although I had a blast in multiplayer, the single player really did stand out to me. In that, I didn't mention this before. I did it in the preview, but it had a Mario Galaxy vibe to it, with how you're hopping, you launch between these different sections of the level. And it's just changing things up all the time. You see different gameplay mechanics, you're coming across new types of enemies, and the way you fight those enemies too just because of the core mechanics, just feels so unique. With how you're like diving in and out of the ink to get a different vantage point. The game is like, I just had a really good time playing it, and it just seems to be, again, I feel like a stuck record saying this about Nintendo games. Like, there's so much charm to this game. The whole look, the sound, and then even the plaza, which we weren't able to play with ourselves, but we did get a brief tour of it from the rep there. And even going like store to store, seeing the dialogue of the shopkeepers, like it is, you know, that classic polished Nintendo dialogue, and it just seems great. So I am really stoked with this game. Like I could talk about any element of the game for a while. I do want to stress again though, like the controls just feel fantastic in this game, especially too using the gyro pad or gyroscope to aim on the gamepad. Like it worked super well. It's similar in style to what we've seen like with Wind Waker HD or any number of 3DS games where it's better for like more nuanced control or nuanced aiming, whereas the right stick is better for like, you know, when you want to make more broader movements. Yeah, it just, like the whole game just feels great. Like I'm really excited to play more. Yeah, I just want to play more of this. So
yeah, I am as well. I can't wait to try it out and get to experience the single player and play online with everybody. And I think that, you know, get Tom in on this and the four of us versus, I don't know, BitBlock or Go Nintendo, whoever.
Right. Yeah,
that'd be a lot of fun.
Right?
Yeah, no,
that would be a lot of fun.
I'm looking forward to it as well. I mean, it's kind of the wild card in Nintendo's upcoming lineup right now, which I kind of love about it. It's kind of the relative unknown quantity, you know, in the Wii U's upcoming lineup, and I really, for that reason, I think it kind of stands out, and no one really seems to be sure what to expect, but all the previews that have gone up from your event, Andre, have been overwhelmingly positive. So I'm excited about it. I think they are onto something here, despite some strange decisions, and I can't wait to play the full game.
I'm just so happy to see Nintendo making new IPs again.
Yeah,
you know, we've had a string of like some eShop games. I don't really count those. I mean, don't get me wrong, they were fun, but like they don't feel like full experiences. And here we are between Codename Steam and now Splatoon. We're getting some pretty big games, and it's finally great to see this after what seemed like a decade of basically nothing new. And it's funny this happening on Nintendo's like we're selling console to date.
Yeah,
so.
Really.
Well, it's Nintendo in desperation mode.
Yeah,
when they're desperate, that's when they get creative.
Yeah, that seems to be the case.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I think that covers it for our Splatoon discussion. So thank you guys for watching. And if you like this video, be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. And of course, stay tuned to GameXplain for more on Splatoon and other things gaming too. Until next time, guys. Bye.